This Saturday is UFC 298, and Ian Machado Garry is doing the media rounds in the lead up to his fight against Jeff Neal. And there's an interview that somebody sent me that really not a lot of people have seen. And this interviewer did a phenomenal job asking Ian Machado Garry the questions the people want to know. They asked him, why did you turn off your Instagram comments? They asked him about his last name. They asked him about his relationship with his wife's ex-husband. And they also asked him about the hypocrisy of his trash talk against Neil Magny and Jeff Neal. He asked him all those questions. We're going to take a look at all of them in this video. But I just thought this was a perfect interview because there's been a lot of different false statements regurgitated time and time again by the MMA community regarding Ian Machado Garry. And I understand people don't like Ian Machado Garry. Some people don't like him. And it's fair to say, oh, Ian Machado Garry just rubs me the wrong way. But what you have is you have a lot of weirdo incel type fan bases that worship the ground Sean Strickland walks on, making up fan fiction about a grown man in Ian Machado Garry and his family just for the sake of making up fan fiction because they hate his guts. And I'm glad that a media member actually did his job for a change and asked decent questions, because now we have a perfect interview to reference to get the answer to some of these questions. And I'm going to break them down when Ian Garry answers, whether or not he's telling the truth or not, because there's some things that you could maybe question in here. We're going to break it all down in this video. And let's start right away with him asked about turning off his Instagram comments. That has been a big point of contention in the MMA community. Ian Machado Garry can't take the heat because he turned off his Instagram comments. He was asked about that, and he gave an answer why he turned off his Instagram comments. Let's take a listen.
Value, and I was like, look, I want to post this photo of me and my son. If I post this photo of me and my son, I'm putting all the money I've ever earned in my lifetime on the first comment being, is the son yours? Did you ask to host? All this negativity.
So there you go. He wants to post photos of him and his young son without seeing weirdo negative comments regarding his family. Let's continue. He goes on a little bit more here.
Of me posting a photo of me and my little boy. And that was a nail in the coffin. Because I'm like, you can attack me all you want, but when you start attacking my family and my wife and my baby, it's off limits. And the truth is, I don't think I'll ever turn the comments back on.
Oh, I know that got a lot of incel fans butthurt. Because, and the reason I think Ian Machado Garry made the right decision turning those comments off is because you could say, oh, he's scared, he's a soy boy, he's a snowflake. He took away all of their power. These people who form these mob mentalities online, when they really get obsessive over a certain person, they love to just swarm and swarm and swarm. But the second he turned off those comments, they can still do it elsewhere, but they can't do it on his personal Instagram, and that infuriates them. So the people that are harassing you, you have now infuriated them. And, I mean, that's perfect in my opinion. That's perfect in my opinion. And even somebody like Sean Strickland, when he was on the Theo Von podcast, he said the wife is off limits. Massive hypocrite because he was attacking Ian Machado Garry's wife. But Garry says, look, you can attack me all you want, but attacking my son, attacking my family, it's off limits. And then he goes on and says a little bit more.
I know Taylor Swift turned her comments off in 2019 and hasn't turned them on since. Looks like she's doing pretty well.
So he basically says, look, me turning off my Instagram comments aren't going to hurt me. I've said this before, I'll say it again. All Ian Machado Garry has to do is continue to win. It doesn't matter. I know there's some people are going to say, oh, he's fumbling and he's not going to be a star because he turned off his Instagram comments and he needs social media interaction and this and that. More people are talking about him for turning off his Instagram comments than would have otherwise. And they're all just looking for these gotcha moments. Oh, let me screenshot another grown man's photo with a snarky comment underneath. Oh, we really ratioed him. We really told him. And now they don't have that power. They're infuriated. Think about this. There's people out there, probably watching this video right now, who are literally infuriated that they can't comment on a grown man's Instagram photos. That's crazy to me. Now, this next part, he references some of the lies that have been constantly regurgitated in the MMA community, and this kind of sets the stage for the rest of the questions that he's asked about in this interview. But he kind of hints at the lies that a lot of people have been saying over and over about him.
And yet, I'm the most talked about fighter on this fight card. I was the most talked about fighter on the last fight card.
Now, I know somebody's going to seize on those comments. I think if Ian Garry isn't the most talked about fighter on 298, I think he's a close second to Ilia Topuria with all his confidence. But I still think Ian Machado Garry is a close second. So I know people are going to harp on that and say he's not the most talked about. People care about Ian Machado Garry. There's media members using his name for clicks. There's YouTubers using his name for clicks. There's Twitter personalities using his name for clicks. Instagram personalities using his names for clicks. He is the second most talked about fighter, if not the most talked about fighter. If he's second, he's very close behind Ilia Topuria.
Everything I'm doing, everything I'm saying, everywhere I'm traveling, the people I'm training with is interesting to the fans. It's interesting to the media. I'm doing everything right in my way. There is nothing that went wrong other than people flipping the truth into lies and bullshit and running with it.
So there you go. He's doing everything right. And I know people are going to seize on that too. But what he's saying is, I'm trying to build my brand and it's working. Regardless if they're hateful, these people care if I win or lose because they're talking about me. And he's right. All he has to do is continue to win and he will become a star in the UFC. He's already more popular, whether it's hate or, people cheering for him. He's already more popular than probably 60% of the roster. So he's right. Even though he's disliked, people care to tune in and watch him fight. Now, in this next question, he's asked about his last name, the whole entire last name situation, and he gives an answer on that. The guy starts to kind of clarify it initially in the question, then Ian Machado Garry jumps in. Let's listen.
Her mother's name.
Her mother's last name.
Her mother's name. So it's her mother's name. And in Brazil, when Brazilians get married, they usually take the mother and the father's name. So it's a Brazilian thing. It's a South American thing where they take the same, like they don't want to lose connections.
So just to clarify, and we already knew this, I've already covered this in the past. Ian Machado Garry, the Machado from Ian Machado Garry, is his wife's maiden name, which is her mother's last name. Okay, people say, oh, it's her wife's ex-husband's last name and Garry took it. And we're going to get into the reason why Garry took it, because I actually think it's admirable why he took it.
To their family.
Perfect.
So they take both names. So there's where you go.
Love it. Thank you. See, that's why we're doing it together. Part two, part of your decision to take on your white Machado in your name is so that your son and your stepson could have a joint last name.
Truth is, it's kind of the only reason. Obviously, having the link to Brazil is amazing, and the Brazilian side of my wife's family, which is the amount of Brazilian family she has, is unbelievable. And to be able to call them family, I'm very happy, very proud, very grateful.
So there you hear, it's the only reason I took the name. He's talking about he has a stepson that is not, technically it's his son. His wife had a previous marriage where she had a son, and now he has the baby you see him carrying around constantly, who's like a year old at this point. So he has two sons, and he explains why he took the last name for the stepson here.
But the truth is, I only did it because I wanted my son and my stepson to really feel connected. I didn't want them going through life with two separate surnames. I feel like there's a little bit of a disconnect. And if you guys want to be brothers, I want to make sure that you guys have that same connection. That was the main reason for me.
And how is that not perfectly admirable? Ian Machado Garry's a family man. So basically, they just added Machado to everyone's name so that his stepson and his son have the same last name, have something in common. I don't understand why that's so frowned upon. If you're one of these people that are worried about another grown man's last name, you are a weirdo. You are a complete weirdo. Even if he did take his wife's last name for the hell of it, he didn't even have any kids. That's his prerogative. Well, I don't understand why we care. But then when you delve deeper, and we already knew this from a UFC broadcast, but a lot of people were spreading this around because they thought it made him look bad. But he took it so his two sons, one stepson and one of his new son from his marriage, have a last name in common. I mean, I think that's more than an acceptable answer. Now, in this next question, he's asked about the ex-husband and, basically, what's your relationship with the ex-husband? He gets into that right here.
So the main reason behind my wife's ex-husband was he's an elite performance nutritionist, and he's very fucking good at what he does, right? To the point at which we've done every single weight cut for the UFC, and they've been easier and easier and easier every single time. We've worked phenomenally together.
So he's talking about the ex-husband is a nutritionist, and he works with Ian Machado Garry. And he goes into explaining why he works with him, which I think, I mean, this is a stark contrast from other high-profile UFC fighters talking about, relationships with father figures and kids and stuff like that. He explains why. First off, one falsehood is that they live together. That's not true. It's just not true. It's completely not true. But the ex-husband works with him as a nutritionist, and Ian Machado Garry explains why.
And I'm very proud of the work we've done. Now, in that same regard, he is a professional in one regard. He's also the father of my wife's son. Mm-hmm. And I never want to be a wedge between a father and a son. I never want that in my conscience. Yeah.
So he's talking about the older son, not the one you see him carrying around, because people have constantly said that's not his son. He's talking about the older son. The nutritionist is the father of that son.
So I know that we're going on this adventure to travel the world. Hey, dude. Want to travel the world, be my nutritionist, and we can all do this together. You can come and see your son whenever you want. You guys can be there. The two of them are going to Disney this morning.
That's sick.
Do you know what I mean? And that's the energy I have. I want to be a good human. I want to be a good man, and I never want to be a wedge between a father and a son, because I know if someone was to be a wedge between me and my son, I'd be livid. Mm-hmm. I'd be livid, and I'd hate that person.
So there you go. He doesn't want to be a wedge between his stepson and his dad. He wants them to be able to spend time together. He wants them to have a good co-parenting relationship. I'm convinced the people who are like, oh, this is weird, this is bizarre, they're just jealous they grew up in a broken home, okay? A lot of kids grow up in broken homes where parents are divorced and the kid has to stay with the mom 3 days a week, and then, the dad 4 days a week, and then they trade weekends, and it's all this different stuff. And it's been well researched. It's not good for kids. It's not good at all. It's better when even a divorced couple has a good co-parenting relationship. And Ian Machado Garry is so mature at his age that he says, you know what? It's not like I'm insecure. It's not like I'm worried about this at all. It's weirdos on the internet who are worried about my marriage. I would love my stepson, who I would love him to have a great relationship with his father. I don't want to be one of those weirdo parents who cause all these issues and problems. And, I don't want my wife to cause all these issues and problems with her ex-husband, because it only hurts the kid. And he gets into that a little bit more here in a second.
And I never want that on my conscience. So the truth is, my wife does not have a boyfriend. My wife has an ex-husband and they have a past. I understand that. I'm aware of that. Everyone has a fucking past in their life. Everyone does. I don't want to be a wedge between my wife and her ex-husband and her kid and have them go through battles and arguments because I don't want them around. No, I'm a bigger man than that. I understand that there's a child in all of this, and he deserves to be prioritized.
I mean, seriously. If that isn't the most admirable thing I've heard, there's so many people out there who now have kids, get divorced, and the next thing you know, they're fighting over custody 24/7. And, the new boyfriend or new husband hates the ex-husband, and there's all these issues and arguments, and they got to involve, lawyers and get custody things and whatnot, restraining orders. All he wants is, I want to have a good relationship with my wife. I want my wife to have a good co-parenting relationship with her ex-husband, and I want her ex-husband, who is the father of my stepson, to be around for my stepson. I know there's people that are going to be down in the comments, oh, this is weird, you're insecure. And the majority of people who whine and cry about this have never been in a relationship at all. They've never been in a relationship. They don't understand what it entails. They have no idea what goes on with children in certain relationships. And they just like, well, I wouldn't let my wife hang out with her ex-husband because, he fucked her 10 years ago. Well, they have a kid now. You have to be mature. You have to move on. That's, no matter what, that's always going to be her child's father. So you want to cause an issue that's going to last for the rest of your life, as long as you're in your stepson's life? It just makes absolutely no sense. And I think the fact that he's so secure, he's such an alpha male, that he's okay with the fact that you are going to have your wife's ex-husband around, you pay him as your nutritionist, You don't live with him so he can travel with you for fight camps when you're traveling around and taking your family, and he can be around his stepson. So his stepson, who's also part of his family, can be there. By the way, I forgot to mention early in the video, I will link this video down in the description if you want to check it out for full context. And shout out to Shaq MMA. That's what the channel this is on, Shaq MMA. Shout out to him. Phenomenal interview. But I think this is admirable from Ian Machado Garry. I know people who are insecure and never been in a relationship or incels. They never leave the house. They probably still live with their parents. They've never had a job. They probably don't understand this level of maturity. But when I heard this full explanation, I always kind of knew the explanation, but when I heard this full explanation, Ian Machado Garry became one of my favorite fighters on the roster. I think that is so admirable to do for a young child, to try to keep their parents in a good co-parenting relationship. When you see all these kids nowadays who grow up all messed up because their parents are fighting all the time and don't take care of them. Now, the next thing we're going to get into, and people have been harping on this for a while. People have been saying, Ian Garry says, you shouldn't attack his family, but he got personal with Jeff Neal, and he got personal with Neil Magny. Apparently, Ian Machado Garry doesn't like anybody named with the name Neil in their name. And he's asked about this by this interviewer, which, great question. And Ian Machado Garry is smart enough to answer this question absolutely flawlessly, and something I've been saying for a while as well.
Jeff Neal, what's the most interesting thing about Jeff Neal? His mugshot. All right, I used it to sell a fight. I inevitably got him to pull out of a fight because of that, right?
Now, he didn't pull out of the fight because of that. That's tongue-in-cheek. That is not true. Jeff Neal pulled out. I believe he was sick or having a tough weight cut. I don't remember exactly what it was. But the fact is, more people were mad that Ian Machado Garry had a mugshot on a t-shirt than were mad that Jeff Neal was out drinking and driving with weapons, by the way, putting families at risk. I've known people that have gotten killed by drunk drivers. More people were mad at Garry for his shirt than were outraged about Jeff Neal driving around intoxicated. And that goes for any fighter. People say, oh, Joey, you're a hypocrite. You never said anything about Adesanya. I have a full dedicated video on Adesanya saying he deserves more punishment than he got from the New Zealand government. So he talks about Jeff Neal. He addresses it right there. Okay, I was selling a fight with Jeff Neal's mugshot.
Let's go back again to fucking Neil Magny.
Neil Magny, and this is something people harped on a lot. Oh, Ian Machado Garry painted him as a child abuser and blah, 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 and how dare he bring Neil's kids into this and blah, blah. Addresses it perfectly, exactly what I've been saying for literally months.
Neil Magny. People are going nuts that I brought his family into saying he beats his kid. Did I say that?
Did he say that? He never said it. He said, Neil Magny said he's accustomed to whooping his kid. That's despicable. And also, he said, no man should ever lay his hand on a kid. That's all Garry said. Garry didn't say, oh, I've heard rumors that Neil Magny beats his kids. Ian Machado Garry didn't say, oh, yeah, I was at a barbecue at Neil Magny's house, and he really likes to, push his kid up against the fence and dirty box him to a, 29-28 decision. He didn't say that. He just referenced Neil Magny's words from a press conference and said, look, you don't ever put your hands on a kid. That's all he said. He never said Neil Magny beats his kids. Did not say that. Just pointed out his words. That's Magny's fault. And he points it out very clearly here.
Or did Neil say that? And I was livid because I was sat with my little boy when I was listening to the interview and went, nobody called him up on that? No one at the press conference went, hey, dude, did you just say you beat your kid? Whether he meant it for serious or meant it as a joke, the words that came out of his mouth, the only person that Neil Magny can be annoyed about is himself. I just pulled him out on his own words.
That is 100% facts. And people say, no, Neil Magny almost lost his kids. He almost lost custody because of Ian Garry. That's not how custody battles work. You do realize that, right? You can't say, oh, some random guy online said, and he fights for the UFC, he said he beats his kids with no evidence, no proof, or no... not witnessing anything himself, no stories, no testimony. You can't say, oh, well, he said this, so that means we're taking your kids away from you. No, what got Neil Magny in trouble is he said, I am accustomed to giving out those types of whoopings to my 2-year-old son. Now, I'm adding 2-year-old son in there, but that's what he was referencing. As a new father, I've become accustomed to giving out those whoopings. And he may have been joking. He probably was joking. People don't understand. They argue, Joey, he definitely doesn't do it. I don't know that. He's the one joking about it. I don't think you should joke about abusing your 2-year-old child. And I think it's more than fair if you say it at a UFC press conference to be called out for it. So at no point did Ian Machado Garry ever almost cost him custody. No, the only thing that was probably brought up in his custody case was the fact that he said, I am accustomed to whooping my 2-year-old son. That is the only thing that was probably brought up. And that's all the main points from the interview. Ian Machado Garry sets the fan base straight. And actually, let's look at one more thing real quick. Let's look at one more thing. Because a lot of people who have been attacking Ian Machado Garry are massive Sean Strickland fans. And they're like, how dare, Ian Garry paint Neil Magny as this and that. How dare him bring up Jeff Neal's mugshot. Let's see what Sean Strickland had to say on the Food Truck Diaries. Let's see what he had to say. Let's listen to a little something from Sean Strickland.
Anyways, back to my rant about Americans. You guys are just soft motherfuckers. You gotta get hit by your family more. We need to bring back alcoholism, maybe some drug abuse. Be good for you guys.
Just toughen them up.
Yeah. Look at like
you grew up tough. That's why you have that perspective.
I mean, you fucking dodge a couple beer bottles and you're a fucking kid. You harden up. I'm not saying that the world will be a better place with more of me, but you guys need to get hit by your dads a little bit more.
You guys need to get hit by your dads a little bit more. And in case that maybe isn't clear enough for you, let's listen to the rest of what he says.
Not even hit, not discipline. You guys don't need to be like, I didn't take out the trash, hit.
So not discipline, not a little spanking. What could Sean Strickland, former UFC champion, be talking about?
You guys need to get like an alcoholic rage beating, and then you'll start fucking learning how.
So there you go. Alcoholic rage beating. That is what former UFC champion Sean Strickland is advocating for kids. Meanwhile, Ian Machado Garry is saying, I don't want to be a wedge between my stepson, my young stepson, and his father, just because my wife is his ex-wife. That's what Ian Machado Garry's doing, the true family man. That is why I hope he beats Jeff Neal this weekend. I'm rooting for him. I'm glad he set the record straight. I know this video is going to piss off a lot of incels. I can already imagine the comments down below. Joey Gary's a hypocrite. Not in anything he stated in this video. Not at all. He set the record straight, and I think Ian Machado Garry is one of the smartest fighters on the roster, regardless of what you guys want to think. If you're worried about his last name, you're a pussy. Okay? If you're worried about that, you truly are. If you're worried about what his relationship looks like with his wife and her ex-husband, you are a straight up insecure man. Leave the house. Go form a relationship. Do something else. Get off the computer. If you are actively harassing him and his family online, you are a piece of shit. Leave him alone. If you want to say he rubs me the wrong way, I don't like the way he kind of mimics Conor, fair enough. Have at it. But attacking a man's family, and the majority of it built on falsehoods, you are a complete embarrassment. That's why I wanted to make this video. I know nobody else will, because it's too popular to slander Ian Machado Garry. It's too popular. Gets too many views and clicks. You'll have MMA media members doing it, asking every fighter under the sun about Ian Machado Garry at every press conference, every interview, just so they can use Ian Garry's name in a thumbnail or on a title or in an article, whatever it may be. But we're going to set the record straight on this channel, because guess what? If you don't like this video, if you didn't enjoy this video, go unsubscribe. I implore you, please. We don't want you here. It's just not what we do here. We speak the truth here. So thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, and I will see you in the next video.